All right, I'm the Cynical Utopian. Let's talk postmodern architecture. And this is part of a series I want to do on different styles, different architects, different cities, and just talk about the background and the best and the worst, in my opinion, that they have to offer. So I picked postmodernism first because it's just goofy, it's hilarious, people love to hate it. It's clunky, it's cheesy, it's cartoonish, and it's controversial to a lot of people because it represents this departure from real design principles, just classic architectural design principles. And it represents this new move into kind of experimentalism, just weirdo, off the wall stuff. And you either love it or you hate it. And so I'm going to go through this, give a quick background of how it emerged, and then just show off my opinions on the best, the mediocre, and the worst. Let's go through here. I don't want to read this because it's real boring if I just read it out loud. So you can read this breakdown, but I'll just give a quick synopsis. Basically, you had the international style, which Mies van der Rohe on the left here was the leader of, and it was this cold kind of form follows function, less is more, minimalism, industrialism, a lot of steel and glass, and it was a bit dehumanizing. It was a little bland. And so Robert Venturi here on the right came out with a couple of books where he presented postmodernism, and he said, instead of less is more, less is a bore. He said, we want to inject some fun, some joy, and, signage and things that tells us what the building is actually about, not just these dark, cold boxes of modernism. So his first book was called Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, published in 1966. And then his second book, which he co-published with his wife, Denise Scott Brown, who was also an architect and urban planner, and one of their apprentice architects, Stephen Eisner. That was called Learning from Las Vegas, and that was published in 1972. And they delved deeper into, reasons for having signage, reasons for having fun with buildings, and having diversity. And they had this dichotomy they created called the duck and the decorated shed. And you can see on the screen, the duck is a building that presents its function with its form. And a decorated shed is, your basic box with signage all over it, which, is prevalent in Las Vegas. In the late 1990s, it divided into a multitude of new styles, including high-tech architecture, deconstructivism, futurism, neo-futurism, blob architecture, neoclassical, and other ones, which I honestly like more than postmodernism. So I'm not going to cover all those in this video, but you can see a list of architects that you can research here if you want to see some of those things. And of course, again, just my opinions. So please feel free to point out your opinions or your reactions or your criticisms or, some of your favorite work that I might have missed. So I'm going to go through here, starting with the worst. And this building to me, it's almost dystopian. I think this is what people think of when they think of postmodernism. Aldo Rossi San Cataldo Cemetery building. And from what I understand, this isn't actually finished. They never finished this building. It's just kind of the structure is there. I think he got sick and something happened, but pretty ugly, in my opinion. Peter Eisenman, in general, this guy, I've never liked this guy, and not to be mean or anything, but just since I heard about him in college, in architecture school, I just thought, man, this guy's pretentious. He's annoying. His architecture's not that good. It's all right. It's just kind of basic gridded buildings. There's some curves. It's pretty decent, but him as a person just makes me dislike it. And I'll show you why, in my opinion, this guy is just annoying.
I'm totally irrelevant as to what people experience when they come to my buildings. They either get what I'm talking about or they don't. But whether they do or they don't, it doesn't affect what I do.
Mm-hmm. Architects don't solve problems and therefore are not helpful to what should the architect do in society. I don't believe the architect should do anything.
Wow.
If anybody wants to study architecture, I would tell them not to. That would be the first thing, because I think it's a very poor profession. For me, it's very rewarding. I love what I do, but it's not something I would recommend for many people, number one.
It's only for him. Guys, you're not going to be successful because you're not as smart as he is. You're not as creative. You're not as interesting. So don't be an architect because it's not fun, except for Peter Eisenman. but that's only because he doesn't care about other people, what they think about his buildings. It's just, yeah, no, it's just annoying to me. But he was part of this group called the New York Five, which early on was a very influential postmodern modern architecture group. Michael Graves was in it, Charles Guathmy, John Hedgehook, and Richard Meyer, all pretty great architects in their own right. So, anyways, Peter Eisenman, the worst. The ING House in Amsterdam. Honestly, I used to love this building. When we studied it in school, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I mean, it looks like a shoe, which is weird. And I went to Amsterdam, actually, and I thought, I got to go see this building. So I walked at night. Just, it's so far away. It's like near a highway somewhere. And I got there, and I thought, huh, there it is. Okay, guess I'll walk back now. I mean, it just looks kind of dystopian. Like, I imagine going to work here, and this is your office building, and you just file into the sole of the shoe, and it feels probably like a Terry Gilliam dystopian movie. You know, there's just like wires and tubes everywhere, and just you're surrounded by glass, but all you see is gray sky. We talk about Robert Venturi. Him and Denise Scott Brown, his wife, I mean, they basically started the movement. They were very influential, great writers, great theorists, and, you know, pretty good architects. I guess they're in their own right. But these two buildings just don't do it for me. Especially this Guild House. It's like, what is the idea here? I mean, it just looks kind of like your standard builder developer home that would just, you know, like a housing complex kind of thing. And then on the bottom is the Seattle Art Museum, and I guess the main feature of it is this large steel sculpture of a metalworker or something. But to me, it's just like awkward proportions. Could have been done better. It seems like it's intentionally wonky, which, yeah, I'm just not into. But transitioning to the mediocre, staying with Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown, these are, I would say, their best examples of postmodernism in architecture. You know, they did a lot of writing. They were more known for writing, I would say. But this blue house is the house that Robert Venturi built for his mother, and that was kind of his playground to examine some of these ideas and show them off to the world. And it was well received. It's still studied in history books and in architecture schools. But, you know, to me, it's just, okay, interesting. And the other two, you know, they're playing with some symbols. They're playing with paint, basically. And it's interesting. It's different. So I'll give it a mediocre. Next, Philip Johnson's AT&T building. Classic, historic, iconic. He was playing with the classic ideas of base, middle, top. It's monumental. The middle is just your standard high-rise building. And then the top is this kind of caricature of maybe a classic portico, and it's almost inverted with that circle in the middle. So, you know, it's interesting. It's different for the time. It was something that caught people's attention. And Philip Johnson's an interesting character because he kind of rode the line between modernism and postmodernism. He did his famous building is called the Glass House. It is what it sounds like. But it's very much a modernist work, whereas this is postmodernist. The Piazza d'Italia by Charles Moore. I mean, this picture doesn't do it justice. I could only get the things that were free use images, so I don't have the greatest pictures. But Charles Moore is honestly a really good architect. He's got some stuff that's more like regionalist, very of the place that it's built, and just kind of like rustic materials. Some really cool houses, but he was doing his postmodernist thing back here, and this building or this plaza is in New Orleans, and I'd say it's worth visiting if you're there. But when you get there, you just go, huh, okay, I guess that's it. Nothing really to do. It's goofy, it's colorful, it's anachronistic, it's fun. Then we have John Outram and two of his projects. Interesting, fun, colorful. I'd say iconic. Of the postmodernist movement, but to me, that's cool. Good job, buddy. But I'm not traveling to see it. Stephen Hall, in general, is, I mean, who am I to say someone's mediocre? He's had a great career. He seems like an awesome guy, but his buildings are just kind of fun. They're just kind of funny and almost childish, and they invite you in. They're approachable. and they're different, they're unique. And Stephen Hall's famous for doing these watercolor representations of his buildings, and they're very cool renderings, and he seems like a good guy. So Stephen Hall's collection in general, pretty solid. Okay, so this one might be a little controversial, or people may disagree with me here, but to me, this is a postmodernist building. The Guggenheim in New York by Frank Lloyd Wright. Most people know Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the most famous architects, definitely the most famous American architect in history. Did some great work, in my opinion, very highly respected, and usually known for doing things in the arts and crafts style. But this building, to me, is a postmodern building. I mean, you look at the form, you look at the simplicity, you look at the playfulness of it, and I put it in mediocre because of the functionalism of it. It's an art gallery with curved walls. And, that's the typical criticism of this building, but it's legitimate because you're putting flat pieces of art, for the most part, on curved walls. It's crazy. But it is a beautiful building, and in my opinion, it's postmodern. Moving on. This is a funny one. Ripley's Believe It or Not Hard Rock Cafes and Theme Park Architecture. To me, that's postmodern. And it's basically a duck, right? Going back to the Venturi lingo, where it represents, this is a place for fun and weirdness and excitement. And so there's one example on the screen, but you're probably familiar with some of that stuff that I'm talking about. Disney architecture, playing off of the theme park theme. These are 3 different buildings built for Disney, whether it's resort on the bottom right or the animation studio on the bottom left. And I believe the top picture is the Disney headquarters in California. But these are fun. They're cute. They definitely fit the brand of Disney. And so I'm giving them a mediocre. Mario Botha is his whole collection. I enjoy. I think it's a little clunky. It's almost brutalist. But to me, there's some qualities in the work that he did that are very unique, innovative, intriguing, beautiful. And whether he's postmodernist or not, I guess you can decide. This is a building by James Sterling, which is known as an icon of postmodernism. This building is in London, I believe, and it's called the number 1 Poultry Building. It's on Poultry Street. And this building actually has a pretty coul story behind it. I think Mies van der Rohe was supposed to build on this lot, and through whatever process, James Sterling ended up beating him, and I guess the people wanted something new, something more innovative, more interesting. So this building's cool. I think it has a good story, but I'm not putting it in the best category for me. Moving on from here, transitioning to another James Sterling building, the Neue Staatsgalerie, aka Staatsgalerie Stuttgart, which I believe Neue Staatsgalerie stands for New State Gallery, and this is by James Sterling as well. And I don't know what it is, honestly, about this building, but I love it. It's like, it's playful, but it's minimally playful. It's minimally goofy and cheesy, and it retains a kind of respectable, high design quality. And I just love the color, the little burst of color on this backdrop of just quality stonework. And so I'm giving this a best. This is in my best category. Next, classic, Seattle Public Library by Rem Koolhaas. Most people know this building. It comes up all the time in architecture school. Some people might put it in the high-tech architecture gallery because I believe it was one of the first to use kind of new design computer software to build La Muralla Roja, The Red Wall by Ricardo Bofill. And this is in Spain, I believe. I mean, just look at that thing. It's beautiful. I mean, the setting helps on a mountainside. And this, to me, just looks like the perfect setting to film a Wes Anderson film at. Just beautiful colors, interesting geometry, the green wash of plants helps. It's just very soothing, I believe. And this project, the Cube House in Rotterdam by Piet Blom. I've always liked this project. Whether or not it's postmodern is up to you. I mean, some people call it structuralism. I just love complex geometry and impossible geometry, M.C. Escher. And this represents that to me. It's kind of throws you off balance a little bit, makes you stop and think and wonder what the spaces are like up there. Somebody had to do it, so I'm glad Piet Blom did. Next, buildings that look like giant animals or objects. Yeah, I'm putting that in the best postmodernist category because it's hilarious and it's fun, it's quirky, it's interesting. You know, life should be fun. Michael Graves. Okay, his work is just undeniably representative of postmodernism. Whether you love it or hate it, if you like postmodernism, you're gonna like Michael Graves, and vice versa, I think. And he also got into product design, and later in his life, for Target, he has this classic teapot he designed there on the bottom right. That's cool. And again, if you're gonna be a postmodernist, you might as well go all the way. I mean, this building went for it, so I give him props. Put it in the best category. Groninger Museum in the Netherlands. And again, we're staying with this theme of like overdoing it. Everyone knows Frank Gehry. You love him, you hate him. He's definitely doing something different. He's definitely breaking traditional standards. He's got a recognizable style. I personally appreciate his work. My wife's an artist. We go to the museums. We enjoy it. And we try not to overthink it, overanalyze it. You know, it is what it is. It's Frank Gehry. But he's undeniably had a ton of success, recognition, made a ton of money, did a lot of projects that a lot of people like, a lot of people hate. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Frank Gehry is crushing it. So, okay, this one. Louis Kahn. People may or may not agree with this, but I think Louis Kahn was at least partially a postmodernist. He was doing work at the same time, 1960s, 70s, 80s. And as you can see, I mean, these two buildings specifically, to me, represent a lot of postmodernist qualities. I think the fenestrations, the openings on the National Assembly building harken back to kind of the Robert Venturi, some of the shapes and patterns that they were playing with in some of their buildings. And it's just this kind of oversized, simplified geometry that I think you see in a lot of postmodernist buildings. But Louis Kahn is in a league of all of his own, I think, and most architects and architecture students would probably agree to that. He's kind of seen as maybe a primitivist, a modernist. So everyone loves Louis Kahn. And so I think some people may even see it as blasphemous to consider him a postmodernist. But it is what it is. So that's my take on postmodernism, best versus worst. Let me know what you think, and I'll be working on a new video. Thanks for watching.